dealing with trials and dealing with circumstance in our life, the first thing we tend to do is pull back.
I just need some alone. Yeah, I need to be by myself.
And what it does, it makes things worse. I mean, you're basically putting your own self in solitary confinement.
Sure.
It's like at a moment when you need people around you, is the time we pull away from people. So maybe in a get together or something, you say, you know what, I don't feel like going. Maybe because of the way you felt. And then you go and you're glad you went. You go, you're like, oh man, I feel so much better because I went. That's what we have to do. We have to fight against those.
Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationships from surviving to thriving. Go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. Today on TMC, we will be discussing, are you lonely?
Until recently, I really didn't understand the full effect and what loneliness really is. So one of the confusion is, what is loneliness? Like, I used to think that, is when you didn't have people around. Like, you hear people say, I'm so lonely, or people like, I'm lonely, so I'm gonna go hop in this relationship or whatever else. But that's not really what loneliness is.
Right. Yeah. Loneliness is really, it's a feeling. It really has nothing to do with people. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, you can be lonely in a room full of people.
That's true.
You can be married and lonely. So lonely is the way you feel. It's not necessarily what you have, but how you're feeling.
Yeah. I was reading a devotional about loneliness, and I love what they said. They said loneliness is when you have a disconnection between your expectations of a relationship and what the reality is. And I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And that explains why people can be in a room full of people but still feel lonely.
Absolutely. And I would say that my thought was the same initially. Like, I guess when I was younger, I thought of loneliness like being alone. But being alone and loneliness is two different things, because there's definitely times in our lives and moments when we choose to be alone. And there's certain times when being alone is good for you to recharge, to refresh. There was times when even Jesus went away to be alone. Yeah. But I think the idea of understanding loneliness definitely is misunderstood, because most people would think the same thing. I'm not with a person. I'm not in a relationship. I'm not dating anyone, or I'm not going anywhere. So I'm lonely. But it's really, like you just said, it's a part of your expectations, and definitely what Cedric said, your feelings, because even if we're in a relationship, but you're feeling lonely, you're in a room full of people, but you're feeling lonely, it's obvious it's the way you feel. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with what's on the outside of you, more or less what's going on the inside of you, your thoughts and how you're processing whatever it is you're currently experiencing. Yeah.
What are some of the things you feel that may cause loneliness?
I think one thing that would cause loneliness is the feeling that you're lacking something, the feeling that you're without something, the feeling that I'm missing something, or I don't. And living in the society that we live in, and everything on social media and everything is, everybody sees everything that everybody's doing. Of course, you have this idea that they're all experiencing something that I'm not experiencing. Yeah. They're all having something that I don't have. And when we think about it in regards to relationships, it's definitely thinking, something is happening that I don't have. I'm lacking something. I'm missing something. So the first thing I would say is the idea or the thought that you're lacking something.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think that comes from a disassociation, like a disconnection of some sort with your feelings, the reality, what you want, what you desire. And I think it goes back to sometimes unexpressed desire.
And when we talk about things that cause loneliness, lack or disappointments, or definitely expectations, things that you thought would be a certain way and they're not that way, or your idea, because especially in relationships, your idea of what a relationship is, your idea of what that person is supposed to do for you, do to you, or your idea of just relationships, period. Yeah. Because I believe we've talked about this a lot of times on the podcast. We've been sold an idea of how relationships go. Girl meets boy, boy meets girl. They fall in and love.
Yeah.
They have two kissing in the tree, KISSING. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby carriage, and all these things. And when those things go differently, then sometimes we're back again at the expectations, and it's not what you expected. So therefore, it not being what you expected is causing this, feeling of loneliness.
Yeah. What are some of the things, and let me ask you, Dr. Jamila, what are some of the things that you currently do to prevent this type of feeling?
And one of the things, and I can give you I can be very transparent, because I feel like our stories, our struggles, not just I've made it to the mountaintop, but what you do in the valley, it really helped people. So one of the things is that, number one, I didn't know I was experiencing loneliness. So I was talking to my friend and I was describing what I was feeling, and she's like, "Baby, that's loneliness." And I said, "Oh, is that what that is?" As a believer, is enjoying the presence of God. And I know that probably sounds like cliche to some people, but it's not, because one of the things as a believer, you know that he's there with you all the time. And so it's like, I started saying, I want him to be my best companion, And so, but it's knowing what you like to do, is enjoying those moments. The other thing is reach out to people. A lot of times we're waiting for people to reach out to us. Reach out to somebody. If you're struggling with loneliness, tell somebody that, be intentional about it. One of the things that I've had to do was be intentional about my connections in this season of my life, because I'm living in a whole different state to where I move and I don't know a lot of people. So it's like I'm being intentional with the people that I'm getting to know or that I already know. And so it's like, I think being intentional with the connections you already have.
One of the things we can do is surround ourselves around people, because oftentimes, than most, we isolate ourselves. It's typically individuals not used to being the one that initiate new relationships or whatever. I think those type of things can lead to loneliness, because we need people in our lives. And I think one of the worst things, especially with social media, where you get on social media and you can see everybody else and what they're doing. And most of us are putting our highlights or our good things on social media. So you have someone that's by themselves. It's so easy for everyone, to always be self-aware, to know what you're thinking, where your head at, where your mind is at, and getting to those places, watching social media and removing yourself from that comparison trap, comparing yourself, you look at somebody else, be like, oh man, I wish I had that. Oh, I wish I had family. I wish I had this, so I think pulling ourselves away from social media and really getting to the base of having relationships and actually meeting people. You may be that individual that you say, you know what, I'm not the one that typically, I don't go out and say hello or whatever. And maybe just initiating it, trying it out. I mean, you'll never know what type of relationships you can pull out of an environment.
That's excellent advice. And you start by doing something that you like. Like if you like bowling, go join a bowling league. Like I was watching an episode of 600 Pound Life, and when she started to regain her life, when she was in the city, she didn't know anybody. She went and did softball because that was something she liked, and she was able to meet people from that. And I think sometimes we can overcomplicate it, but it's like, just keep it simple, Sally.
Yeah, that's true.
So I would say, to the answer to Cedric's question, you guys just gave us two practical things. First of all, being honest about how you're feeling and talking to someone. And then second of all, don't isolate, because I think that loneliness is a lot of times heightened by the fact that most of the time we do isolate. We keep it secret, which is what you're talking about. I'm feeling some type of way. Don't know what I'm feeling like. Why am I sad? Smiling. Hey, I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm at church doing all the stuff, but I'm sad. So you're experiencing these feelings, but we're not open and honest about it. And then the second thing is that when we're feeling that way, we typically do isolate. Like, I'm just going to be by myself because I'm going through. I'm just going to be by myself because I don't feel good. Everywhere I go, I feel this. So, or whatever.
Isn't that strange how naturally, it's a natural thing. It's like, if you're feeling some kind of way or whatever, it's so natural for us to get further away from people. Just listen to you.
Absolutely.
And that's typically what happened. I mean, if something going well, we're dealing with trials and dealing with circumstance in our life, the first thing we tend to do is pull back.
I just need some alone. Yeah, I need to be by myself.
And what it does, it makes things worse. I mean, you're basically putting your own self in solitary confinement.
Sure.
It's like in a moment when you need people around you is the time we pull away from people. So I think that's dangerous. Absolutely. I think that's dangerous, and that can eventually lead to depression or some type of thing like that. Yeah.
You took the word out of my head. I was thinking that's dangerous, and I had to learn this in my 20s too, and it came very clear. Insulation, not isolation, is that when you're going through things or you feel a certain way, surround yourself with the right people, the people who are going to encourage you and speak life over you and speak into you. And you have, but I think you have to know who those people are, because putting the wrong people in that recipe is.
And see, and when you were saying that, Jamila, in my mind, I'm clearly like, okay, let's get this straight, TMC. First of all, surround yourself with the right people in the first place.
True.
So if your community is the right people, you want to surround yourself all the time with people that you can be honest with and be like, today just ain't good, or I've been in this funk for so long, and you can't be honest with them about that. As Cedric was talking, I was thinking about something that I tell people a lot of times when I'm talking to them, and we're believers, but regardless of if they are or not, I always say God did not create us to do life alone.
That's right.
We are called the body of Christ for a reason. We are a body of believers, the church, the connected Christians, period. All over the world, we're connected together because it's not good for man to be alone. God didn't intend for us to endure the things that we're enduring, or even our disappointments, our expectations, whatever it is that's leading to this feeling of loneliness. I don't believe that God intended for us to do it alone. And he equipped us with the body of connecting to people. And so when we connect to people, if we make it a point to have the right people from the beginning, making moves, I'm choosing the right community to be in so that I can say, listen, I'm saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, but I've been in this funk for a while. And they'll say, hey, this is what you're feeling. They won't even allow you to just go to that isolation part. They're still always trying to include you, always trying to add you, always trying to, and not in a sense of business, because we know we could be busy doing nothing, but in a sense of not letting you get to that place. Because I believe when we're lonely and we isolate, then your brain goes through a rabbit hole, because now it's nobody wants to be around you, or you're all by yourself. Everybody's forsaken, whatever it is. Nobody understands what you're going through. It becomes, and that's how it leads to the depression. It becomes a spiral, because you're in. When they talk about solitary confinement, that drives people crazy. Putting someone in solitary confinement mentally bothers them. It puts them in a mental state where they're not operating to the best of their ability or to their capacity. And they have studies to show that people being in solitary confinement causes mental issues. So if they're struggling now with mental health, then you isolating is pretty much, like Cedric said, the same thing. You putting yourself in solitary confinement, and now I'm experiencing all these other things. It just becomes heightened. It's the sense of focus, and there's no way to get out, because it's just a spiral, and it keeps going further and further down.
And I think when you explain it that way, it makes sense how someone can be a male, someone can be single, somebody can be married, but somebody can be strong. And I think that's another myth about loneliness. It's like, oh, but you're so strong. It's like, right. It have nothing to do with the price of tea anywhere. And so it's like, but when you explain it like that, it makes sense. It gives it, okay, anybody is subjective to that, or, susceptible to that. So these are things, and I think there are things you can do to safeguard that. One of them is just open up your eyes to realize the connections that you have around us. A lot of times, because when you're in that solitary confinement, you're having conversations with yourself, and sometimes those are the worst conversations ever. Because then you hear old narratives, something somebody said to you, you're always going to be by yourself, and all this other stuff. But it's like, if you're talking to the right people, if you have your community that's going to build you up. Because recently I was talking to someone, and they were telling me they were in a certain space, and they left feeling so defeated. And I think that is like, was pushing them towards that. And it's like, wow. So when we're talking about having that right community in that right space, that is critical and so crucial, because it's like those words are so powerful. And so because somebody will say something, they'll drop that seed, You go to isolation.
Take root.
That's it. And it started growing and we water it, we nurture it.
Every thought, every moment, everything, once it's been planted, every thought, you just continue to process and you not even realizing that you're watering it.
That's right.
That you're watering. Now it's like, they right. I can't do right. Nobody wants to be around me. Nobody, I'm all alone in this fight. Nobody understands what I'm feeling.
You have that community. First of all, make sure you have the right community. Once you get that right community, utilize that right community. If something is going on, you're going to feel like drawing away. You're going to start telling yourself stories like, I don't want to bother nobody with my stuff. I don't want to, but I want you to erase all that stuff out of your head. It's not the truth. The devil is a lie. How many times you've been in a situation where it may have been a family gathering or may have been a get together or something? You say, you know what? I don't feel like going. Maybe because of the way you felt. And then you go and you're glad you went. You go, you're like, oh man, I feel so much better because I went. That's what we have to do. We have to fight against those thoughts that's telling us to stay at home, to isolate ourselves. We have to fight with those thoughts, and we have to put ourselves amongst people that love us. They love us. You're not getting on their nerve. Call them. Right. Tell them what's going on. They want to hear. They want to make sure you're okay. And you know what? If you're not good, you're not good. Stop telling people you're blessed and highly favored when you're really not.
You know what? I want to really make this very point. And we are saying community. Community could be 2 or 3 people.
Right.
It could be another person. And
one person.
One person. And for me, it's like, it's not always that I have to see that person face to face. A phone call, that random text message sometimes is powerful, because it's authentic. And I think that's authentic communication. We have people, and check on the people in your community. Check on the people in your community.
Yeah. For you, when you're realizing that someone is pulling away, they may be feeling this way. And we can help them combat it by, as their community, not allowing them to retreat if we feel or we see that that's what they're doing. They're isolating, they're staying away, they're not being a part of things. So, reach out and not allow that to happen as well.
Yeah. And, and I think when you reach out to allow them to express what they're going to be a listening ear without going into fix it mode. Sometimes it's just listen, active listen, your role is just to listen sometimes. Absolutely. And I've realized that goes such a long way.
Yep. Absolutely. Because it's not necessarily that it's always you. A lot of times it's not, we can't fix it.
True.
It's not for us to fix. They just need the support. They just need to know that someone is listening, someone cares, someone is there. And that's it. It's just simply being the community of support. And Cedric, you were talking about,
you said a lot of good stuff.
I know, because I think this, and I definitely know it's something that he's passionate about, because we talk about it a lot, whether it's in relationships or whatever. A lot of times when you want to support people, you can see that they're pulling away, or that they don't, exactly. And that's the thing. I'm glad that you said that. You said that it's natural to feel that way. Normal. Because I think, especially, we already stated, we already know we're all believers. A lot of times we think that we have to hold this facade and be, we're not being, true Christians if we say this, or people are going to somehow judge our relationship.
We're not as Christian.
I think that's the problem, and that's a big problem because of the church. Churches at fault for that, making people think they have to be perfect, when really the people that's behind the pulpits or whatever they're speaking, they're not perfect either, and they're struggling. They're dealing with things. They're dealing with they're dealing with all these things, and I think it's another trick of the enemy. What we're doing, we're just killing each other. We're killing each other with this so-called perfectionist and this so-called gotta be the it and gotta be holier than thou, and we're killing ourselves. I mean, pastors are quitting ministries, and people are depressed, and people are going through all these things. And the only thing somebody else wants to tell you is pray and be strong in the Lord. And it's like, whoa, that's some real issues going on. We need to pull away the super spiritual.
Yeah, that's definitely what the people need, that we need as people, not the people. We all need as people. We need the practicals, because it's easy for someone to share something with you, and I can quote scriptures that I learned in Sunday school or whatever to the person. Then they retreat even more, because now you're feeling like, okay, now, I mean, that didn't help me at all. And not that We know that the
Yeah, because
scripture.
people make you feel guilty, like, oh, you don't have faith. You gotta have faith. Like, what?
Yeah.
What you mean?
Yeah,
Like, it's not a test of my faith. This is an indicator of I'm a human being.
I'm just like the humanity, because the reality is that we hold so much things in. You were talking about pastors and the rate of pastors quitting ministries, but the rate of pastors who are committing suicide.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's because we're holding on in because we think that there's this image that we're living up to, and it's society and the church. Like, if I hear one more person say, "Go get the bag," it's like, be authentically you.
What does that mean? I never heard that.
Go get the bag.
That's like that's a term that they use for instead of grinding and making money now.
Or hustle.
They hustle. It's called go get the bag.
Yeah, go get that money. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I never heard that.
It goes so much deeper than that, because one of the things, it goes back to being vulnerable, being authentic. I have a counselor, and I'm fortunate that I have a counselor, and we pray and we talk about the word in my session. But I have a counselor. Prayer and counseling go together for me.
Absolutely.
And it's like having these tools in my life so that I don't have to falter, but it keeps me from saying I have to have it all together, because that's too much pressure. And that pressure is that internal pressure. I have to have it all together. I don't. I never have to have it all together.
And even this pressure that you're talking about is also, I think, sometimes what creates that feeling of loneliness, because if it's coming from a place that you believe that something is lacking or something is missing, it's like it's feeding it. I think of it as a fire, like the pressure that society, that the world, that other believers that we put on people, if we're not careful, these pressures make this stuff like it's a small fire, and now we just dump gasoline on it, and maybe I would say trickled gasoline on it, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, when the truth is that based on what we're talking about and what we know, what we see, everybody's dealing with something, and they're human beings. We have moments of ups and downs, and if we're allowed to be honest about that, it's so much different. I guarantee you that you can answer this question with a yes. Did you or did you not feel better when the friend said, "Oh, baby, that's loneliness"?
Yes.
Because now I know what it is. Now, exactly. It has a name. It has a tag. Now, what do I do with it? What do I do about it? Oh, I have a community. I can seek help. I can talk to my counselor about it. I can talk to my leader about it. I can talk to my pastor about it. I can talk to my friend about it. I can talk to my coach about it. Whatever it is, you now have something to say, oh, this is what it is. I know what it is. And now I know, what to do with it, or at least have an idea of where to start.
Yeah, because the reality is this: when you look at Jesus right before he was about to be crucified, then he say, nevertheless, he was saying Jesus was real. I'm like, that's what I love me some Jesus. Right. Like this. Yeah. It's okay to have those feelings. It's okay not to be like to have it all together. And I love that. And I think that's where help came from.
Well, Jesus taught me that it's okay to be human.
Yeah.
And I think that's why that's why we need to read our word, because it's okay. Your flesh getting in the way. Share. Yeah. Jesus was so open with it. It's in the Bible.
That's it.
Said, remove this bitter cup.
Yeah.
But not my will, but let thy will be done.
Yeah.
Do we have one more practical?
One more practical.
I think one of the things that you can do individually, and I know some people may not, but journaling is really, because that can help you get down to the root of what's really going on. For me, I've journaled since I was probably in 6th grade. I don't do it always consistently, but when I start writing, because it's so funny, because I'm like, I don't have nothing to say, and now I start writing them like 5 pages later, I'm like, wow. But it helps me to get down to what the root of my feeling or what I'm experiencing, and then there's this documentation, so that it's been so helpful for me to go back and read my journals from 10 years ago. I'm like, wow, because I can see my growth, or I can see, man, this time of year you were going through the same thing. Is there a pattern going on? So like journaling is a really powerful tool, because it's a tool that you can do anywhere, and you can do it by yourself.
Yeah. I want to do one more practical. So we got two practical. I want to do one more.
No, I would say coaching and counseling. That Jamila mentioned that as well, and I definitely agree with it. I promote it. I think it's important, because it's someone to walk with you. It's like, and also they're outside of your community as far as friends or whatever. And the coaches, counselors, they're going to give you unbiased advice. Mentors as well, coaches, whatever. Anyone that is going to give you, they're going to come from that outside perspective. She said it was a friend for her. It could be a counselor for someone else. It could be a coach. It could be a mentor, someone to help you first off realize what it is that you're describing to them, and then that's willing to walk along with you as you walk it out. So coach, counselor, mentor, pastor, whoever is that person that can do that. They give you that outside view, that outside perspective, unbiased opinion, and then they're willing and able to help you walk through it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you know someone that may be dealing with loneliness, go ahead and share this video with them so they can implement these practical steps into their lives.
Because the key takeaway is that you're not alone in what you're facing.
Absolutely.
You're not alone. Things you can do to help navigate through this season, through this feeling that you're experiencing right now, that this is your today, but it doesn't have to be your later today or your tomorrow. Can you do me a favor? Go ahead and click that subscribe button, please, and thank you.
We want to thank you for joining us today on this episode. We hope that you receive information that is helpful to you. If you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us spread the word.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving. Bye. See you next week.